First up is Sebastian. All right. Yeah, nice work. I can see that you've made a lot of improvements from the last time. Again, I love the breath there. Really like how you've probably would benefit from some motion blur this render. Lots of detail on the hand and arm movement there. I like how he goes up on his elbow, pulls up the knee, second knee, gets on his feet. And then here's where you had that really stiff pose, and you have that tilt there, and then he turns, and that's much better than what you had before. I think you could have a little bit of maybe a little bit more going on the wrists, just a touch of maybe follow through on the wrists, because they seem kind of stiff. There's something a bit too kind of jerky about his foot movements here. You might want to just make those a little smaller. Right there, that kind of that jerk forward is particularly jarring. There. The double take works. And that works. Yeah, and the kick has improved quite a lot. I like that he comes into this pose at the end, and it looks like again you're breathing, which I really like. But the root and the legs look a little bit frozen. So again, maybe if you could kind of have him shift his weight over one leg, as he puts his arm down, that might um, liven that up a little bit. But yeah, let's just watch it one more time. Overall, this is a real excellent job on this. The render looks nice. I like the kind of bluish shadows to contrast the pinkish light. Um, Nice soft shadows. Yeah, really great work. Yeah, just all around excellent piece. Next up is Nadia. All right, let's watch it again. Yeah, it looks like you got some emotion from that pause, from the sigh. I meant to say. Um, and I like that you've got the kind of pause on the hand there before he releases. I think that's an improvement. There's something about one thing is about this movement towards the door. Like, see how his whole arm and his body are moving all together. I'd kind of like to see him maybe just take a step, like maybe go from like, because that's also, is that just one big step? It seems like for closing the door, it's kind of on the long side. So I might do a shorter step, maybe to here or something, and let him stop. And his legs at quite an angle to go this short distance, and then use his arm to do the rest of the way and let his arm stretch out. Um, you could give that a shot. And there's something not right to me about this turn. I think part of it is this leg here seems to be lifting up a lot, but also the arm movement is a little awkward. So I think like maybe let the arm trail behind. I think the way it's sort of following the leg looks odd. So if leave the arm straight and behind him for a moment, and then if you want, he can kind of swing it around a little bit afterwards, like kind of like you have there. But maybe I think it's just the way that all kind of moves at the same time in this area is sort of distracting me. Maybe another blink or two in there too, because his eyes look a little, after this point, they're looking a little, I don't know, dead or something. Another thing about eye movement is with the one exception when you're tracking a moving object, like you're watching someone walk across the room, that kind of thing. But besides that exception, eyes move in what they call darts, these very quick movements. So if you have a couple of these little eye darts where they kind of jerk from side to side, go to one, hold in one position, and then jump to the next position, really in one frame. Like it's like you don't even have to see the movement, but see how his eyes are sort of always moving with his head, and normally the eyes are kind of locked on something that they're looking at. So I think that the eyes will feel more alive if, for example, you keep them held on the door handle for a moment, and then they kind of dart to look in front of him, and then they stay pointed in that direction as his head kind of catches up with his eye direction. And then again, you might dart to look to this side of the screen and then turn that way, rather than having the eyes kind of move with the head, which makes them feel a little bit dead. But all that said, this piece is looking good. You've got a lot of detail. The render looks good. There's emotion there with the sigh, and it feels like something kind of realistic, which it's appreciated. Next up is Stephanie. All right. So yeah, this is looking good. It's got a lot of good poses there. Um, I think the render turned out very nicely, especially considering it's a hardware render. You got some good shadows and colors of the lights and textures are looking good and all that. Um, let's focus in on the animation. First of all, this walk is very fast and sort of jerky and awkward. You'll notice if I'm just going to slow this down a couple times and watch it again. And that's maybe too slow now at the beginning, but that last little part is still even really fast. So let's go back to normal. So yeah, it's like, the other thing is, look at the feet. See how, like, for example, it's a little hard to see because the table right now, this foot is moving, so that one should be placed on the floor, but see how it's sliding there. It should not be sliding, so it's like she's sort of skating across the floor, and those feet should be, one should be locked while the other one's moving, and vice versa. So this pose is good, but she goes into it pretty fast. You might want to slow that down. And when she picks this up, it's looking like her arms are overextended, like they maybe you've pulled the control beyond the length of the arm. So it's good to leave at least a little bend in the elbow, even if you're straightening out. The other thing, so move her body a little closer, and maybe she picks it up with one hand, and maybe the second hand comes to join it, maybe here. So for example, like, she could come out of this pose and just sort of, instead of dropping both arms at the same time, maybe she lets this one linger here and drops that one and reaches for the object, and then has the other arm join later when she goes to put it on there. Here again, feet sliding when she moves from here to there. It's like she sort of skates across the floor there. So you want, one foot locked on the floor at a time. And for this grab, it's like it sort of pops up as soon as her hands get even close to it. So leave it on the table, really get a nice grip on it, and really get some nice hand contact kind of wrapped around the edge there. And then pause and then lift it up. And that'll look better. So yeah, overall, there's a lot of good stuff going on here, and I think with some improvements, can really come together. Let's see if we can figure out some of the stuff that's going on in this file. Switch to channel box here. Oh, this is, yeah, let's get that out of the way, and might do two panes side by side here. Put the perspective in one of the views, and let's should probably turn off some of this stuff in here, just so I get a little bit quicker interaction. I think the ambient occlusion, yeah, that's much better. And let's show our NURBS curves. Okay, great. So now I can see what's going on. So let's see what's happening with this walk. So the feet sure are sliding a lot. So let's, kind of look at these one at a time. So, yeah, a lot happening here. So I would say, this foot should be locked here. So until this foot lands, let's say, I guess at frame 10. So I'm going to take out that keyframe and go back to this one, and then to make it stick, the trick I like to use is I go to this frame. Let's zoom in a little bit here. If I go to this frame, if I middle mouse click on the timeline, it will update the time without changing the position. So then if I hit S, it'll keyframe it in the same position as it was there. And it should lock, and it's not. Why is it not locking? Now here's where I'm worried that you've animated this, and that's going to make this really difficult. So you've got all that motion on there. So first thing to do, so really this guy, and I know this is confusing for people, this is just to get it placed in the scene in the first place. So I'm going to delete all that animation. Where'd it go? Let's do it this way, because I think I'm where delete selected we want, right there. Okay, so now that foot's locked. See that? Okay, we're probably gonna have to rework the animation of the root, because you had that thing interacting with the root, and they were kind of fighting each other, and that was making everything kind of difficult. So, but that's okay. So we've got this foot locked, and then this one, let's say, lands here. So I'll select that one, and that should be locked until, let's say, that one lands here, right? So I'm going to get rid of this keyframe and this keyframe. I'll hold down Shift, click and drag, right mouse click, delete, and then go here. And then I want these two to be the same, so I'll click on this keyframe, middle mouse click here, and then hit S. And now that foot's locked. Okay, it's a bit of an awkward step, so we might want to rework that. Let's see how it's looking in this view so far. Well, I think that doesn't go maybe far enough here. It's kind of weird where it lands, this one, so I might because it's almost like it goes almost backwards between these two. So let's Why am I not seeing my manipulators? Yeah, sometimes that just happens. It's really weird. Sometimes I have to restart Maya. I have to get my manipulators to show back up again. Because I'm hitting W, I should see the manipulator, and it's not showing up. But interestingly, you can still kind of middle mouse drag. So I'll just use that. So yeah, I thought that should come out a little further. And then hopefully we can zero out the translate Y. So we might have to, we're going to have to adjust her root as well. But that's looking like a little better. This one I might just delete and see what happens. Oh, is that the one I was messing with? It should have been. Yeah, let's get this to extend a little further. Zero out that translate Y. And then I'm going to also adjust this position as well. Just. Is that not? Oh, sorry, this guy. There we go. Okay. But the other weird thing is that, her forward movement is sort of pausing here, and it shouldn't. So what can help, you've got this sort of complicated turn up to here, but between here and here, we probably don't need those keyframes in between. So I'm just going to remove these. That should help smooth out that forward motion a little bit better. She's kind of getting a little bit ahead of herself. Okay, and now let's lock this one down between here. Whoa. Yeah, and this is where it's kind of gone berserk. So I'm starting to really fight the animation you have. So it's getting to the point where if you wanted to, have this walk here, I might actually redo it because I'm having to redo so much stuff. And I think the biggest thing was that you animated this, and that the animation of this guy was fighting the animation of that guy. And you want to just use this to place the character in a scene, and then use this to move the character around. Okay, so let's just move forward and look at some of the other stuff I was talking about later on. So we've got obviously a real problem here because you had you would use that ring on the bottom to move the character into position. So I'll just reopen the file and demonstrate one of the other things from there. Okay, let's kind of pretend that that other stuff is fixed, which it's not. Oh yeah, we had the two panes side by side perspective view, and then turned off that ambient occlusion because that seemed to really slow down my interaction. Okay, and let's show the NURBS curves in here. Okay, great. So here's where, so I was wrong about your, I assumed you were using IK hands at this point, but you weren't. So yeah, for here, have her be a little closer to the table. And I usually like to use IK when I'm picking stuff up, because I think that's where you're making this hard on yourself, is to get the hand in just the right position using the FK controls on the arm is just really challenging. So you can animate switching this, right? So you can keyframe the FK blend so that, I would get rid of all these keyframes off of it first. Um, and it's tricky enough to switch those that sometimes I just tell people. But anyways, just finish what I was saying. Sometimes I say, oh, just put it in one and leave it in there, the one that you'll use the most. But so now, you can do it like maybe here. Um, so maybe like here we'll do FK mode, and then, as it approaches here, we'll switch to IK, and you'll probably see the arm like fly off far away because it's way over here. And now I'm just going to hit W, hold down V, middle mouse drag to kind of snap it to some nearby thing. So this is what I thought you had done when the arm looked really stretched out. I thought you had overextended it like that because I thought you were using IK. But I would recommend IK for... It's really hard to do this without my manipulator. I just don't want to restart Maya right now. So you can see that hopefully the blend will work okay. It's switching. I might delete all the keyframes off of this as well. And so it just starts there. So it doesn't have to like fly in. So it's like FK, and then it's switching, and then now it's IK, right? And then from there point forward, you can animate using IK. And I find that's easier for picking stuff up. You can rest a hand on a table. It'll be more predictable, because the frustrating thing with FK is, okay, say you get the hand in the perfect position, and then you move the body a little bit. Well, now the hand's moved, and then you have to readjust it. And then if you're going to go back and forth and back and forth. But if it's IK hand, you get the hand in the right position. It's going to stay in the right position, and you can adjust the body, within reason, all you want. So definitely for the picking up stuff, switch to IK. And I think that gets to what we ran into with picking up the shield too. That probably some of the trouble you had there. So after the walk's done, animate the IK switch. Make sure you delete all the keyframes and just have, the blend over the area that you want to switch, and then move forward with IK. Another thing you might want to do, just with a very limited time left, is just cut that walk out of your final. If you have enough time to get the walk right, great. But given the time you have, I'd rather see you get this whole end part right, and quality over quantity. So, okay. Next up is Todd. All right, well, this is coming together really well. You mentioned something in your post about the speed. I was surprised at how much faster my animation moved after rendering, which is strange. I mean, it should be the same. A common mistake is people will render, and in After Effects they'll have the wrong frame rate. So, for example, in Maya, I still have this other scene open, but just to look at the animation preferences, which you can get right here, the default playback speed is 24 frames per second real time, and real time means it will keep up with 24 frames per second even if it has to skip frames to do so. And then in After Effects, after you render it, when you want to export it, or if you're using Premiere, you want to make sure that you are using 24 frames per second there, because if it does 30 frames a second, then it will be faster. So maybe that's what you're seeing. But when I watch this, the pace looks okay. So let's watch it again. Still finding the walk a little funny. It's almost like he has a limp. It's like he's favoring one leg. So yeah, I can see that you've put that little bit of wrist in there, which I think really helps. It's that like, so he takes this step, and then I feel like he could kind of cross over further here than he is. So he just crisscrosses his feet, and then that's the other thing I think that bugs me. I think that's partly why it looks like a limp. So it's not so much that crossover, it's that this next step is so tiny. You know, like that his left foot only moves that tiny bit, and then suddenly you cross over really far with this one. And I guess what I would expect for this kind of smooth, sort of stealthy movement is to kind of, yeah, okay, you can take that first step, but when this leg crosses, this leg should go all the way across to a step that's more like that as the first one. So instead of doing this like tiny baby step here, he does that, and then yeah, and then he crosses over again like that. It's just, and maybe you were trying to just add that little bit of variety, but it just looks weird. And I guess if you're going to do that, I'd want it justified with something else, like maybe he kind of tenses and looks a different direction, like he heard some sound or something and is reacting to that. Um, but the way it is, it doesn't feel that right. Um, I think that it would be good if you can get the hand to really um, grab the wall. I think I talked about that last time. There's a little bit of interpenetration going on here. Um, and I don't know if you're using FK or IK, so IK is going to make that a lot easier. I just showed in the last video how to switch that and animate that. Um, but yeah, the lighting looks great, and the look of the piece is really good. I really love the fast swing around and point there. That's looking good. I think you can swing wider with the arm, like, so it kind of makes more of this sort of arc shape as it comes around. Yeah, looks good. Yeah, some really nice work here. Render looks good. Brick wall texture is great. Street texture, if I was going to do anything on the textures, I would find something else for the ground, because it looks like, I don't know, sort of like a carpet or something. Where's the rest of the textures are coming along? Maybe the trash can can use some wear and tear. But yeah, and then I guess maybe the other thing I'm noticing here is that something about his neck looks a little stiff for some reason. But yeah, maybe, I don't know. I guess that's alright. I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, really good work. Next up is Cameron. Okay, so yeah, I mean, from my memory of this, I'm not seeing too much different from the last time. We've got a lot of the same issues. Um, I talked about the feet not sticking, and I'm wondering if you're having the same issue that Stephanie did, where you're moving that ring to moving around rather than moving the feet and the root, which is what you should use. You should not be moving it by the ring, because that makes it nearly impossible to make the feet stick. I think I talked about that last time too. Um, yeah, because she looks like she's sort of ice skating on the floor. And that's really distracting, because other than that, there's a lot of good poses. Liking the jumping over here. And I also talked last time about, having her, much like the bouncing ball, having her fully stretched out, really right here, like where she's fully elongated here. And then after contact, then she squashes down. And you might want to adjust the camera a little bit. I understand you're trying to, sort of see the full jump, but if you cut, you could cut a tiny bit later if you want, but maybe shift the camera up so the top of the frame is here, and then we still have some room at the bottom to see her a little bit, because it's almost like she almost very nearly leaves the frame here. So anyways, fully elongated when she first makes contact with the ground, and then crouches in that, but you have her gradually crouching as she goes down. And the whole point of that is you want that sort of crouch, that very quick squash, if you will, to absorb the energy of the fall. Otherwise, she doesn't have any kind of uh, room left to absorb the contact of the fall there. So yeah, I mean, mostly it's the same points I made last time, and I also mentioned, putting just colors at least on the surfaces if you don't have time to texture it, and maybe filling in some of the shadow areas. Okay, and so yeah, keep working for next week. Next up is Sean. Sean, you're talking about your shadows, and Steven did a pretty great video on there on getting soft shadows, so take a look at that. Um, uh, you know, to get your shadows looking better. Let's take a look at your work. So first of all, clearly some nice improvements in the animation. I can see you taking what I say to heart, and I always, of course, appreciate that. Liking that you did choose to do the sliding thing. I think that the thing is with this is just as soon as it clears the edge, then you want to see it come down. Whereas she's kind of, you know, so basically just have that down movement start as soon as the box clears the edge, rather than having her pull it out beyond the edge and then drop it. But mostly you've got it right. But yeah, it definitely has more weight now. I think if you can just get that drop to start sooner, that's looking really good. And still something a little these are okay. I think it's the unevenness of the pace. That step seems real hard for someone, like, and by hard I mean that there's this fast kind of right around here, like it suddenly accelerates between, you can actually, I think you can change this to frame numbers. Um, like right here around, 126, 127, right around there, it suddenly really accelerates, which gives you this kind of feeling of a very hard step down. And she's covering such a short distance. I wouldn't expect that. So if you can kind of smooth that out, that's going to be better. Yeah, nice. I really like the way the hands, are placed solidly on the table to support her weight as she goes down. That's good. Um, I feel like you could slow down between here, we're around 225 to 230. That really 227 to 230. There's just a sudden. See how the elbow kind of pops up real fast? It just feels a little too quick there for someone, somewhat casually getting something out of a box. And I think you can, you have this kind of fishing around motion here. I think that, like, if you're going to move around, okay, but still have have the moment where what I imagine is happening inside the box is there's at least a few frames where her fingers are grasping. I know we can't see it, but I feel like there should be a pause for, let's say her hand makes contact. I think you can lose this fishing around, this back and forth thing here. I think because she's looking right in the box, she's not going to need to move her arm afterwards. So go straight down. Don't do the back and forth thing. Just kind of have a pause. She can have a slight. See how her body's totally frozen here? Nothing is moving but the arm. So get like at least some very subtle movement of the root, spine, neck, head, just enough to keep her alive here. But pause the hand movement because I imagine her fingers are grasping the object. And again, we have another movement that goes too quick here. The hand just sort of pops out real fast. So again, around here, 246, 247, 250. Slow that down a little bit. And again, I think you can, remember to keep the body alive. See this movement here that you've got going on. Watch this. There's movement. It's just enough. You could go further, but she's alive, right? But here, she's frozen, except for the arm. So you need that kind of level of movement to kind of keep her alive, which you have in most of the rest of this, actually. I like that reach there, too, that the way that she kind of lifted herself up and curled. That feels very believable. So there's loads of great stuff going on here. I think just, slow it down when those really quick parts where it just seems to snap a little bit. And yeah, and when I don't know what the deal is with the color and texture. If you can get some kind of basic color and texture on her, that's going to really improve this. So Byron's up next, and yeah, I see what you're saying with the physical sun and sky that you mentioned. It's disappearing for some reason. Um, that shouldn't really happen. Not sure what the deal is. We check the clipping plane on the camera and maybe increase that, the far clip plane. It's in the attribute editor for the camera. Yeah, besides that, I don't really know. I'd have to see the actual my scene file to try and play with that, so you might want to send that over. Let's take a look at your video. Alright, so there's not loads of changes here. Looks like you did get the movement of this board better, though. It does seem to stay resting on there. I guess that's a bit of a jump cut there. I didn't remember that from last time. Maybe I just forgot. I think the B's a little bit better, but I think that it's kind of weird coming out at that angle. I mean, I know it's a cartoony looking bee, but I still want it to fly a little bit more like a real bee. Getting that kind of like really quick and zippy kind of movement, but with those sudden turns that bees do. One thing that's a little weird is the hand's contact with the thing. So I'd expect her to kind of have this thumb hooked under the lid, but the hand's kind of really moving all over the place and doesn't really seem attached to the lid. And like here, like we see this big gap here. So I'm wondering, you should be using IK hand for this. I'm hoping you are. And then you can move the two things together perfectly. But I think, really, I know it's sort of a mitten, but, really get that thumb kind of hooked under the bottom there so she has a grip on it. And I guess what also, I don't know how this ended up happening, but she's holding it up with her right hand here, and then suddenly now she's holding it up with her left hand. I don't know how that switch happened. It's almost like you flipped the image. I don't quite have that figured out. Anyways, yeah, Zippier B. I like what's happening here with like resting the hand on here, but stop there. Don't do this kind of lifting the fingers off yet, because she's sort of supporting herself with that, and it would feel good if that hand came to rest. And again, with this one, get a real grip on that thing. Her hand is just, her fingertips are just touching it, and it's not that believable. This looks improved to me, the way this thing slides across, if memory serves. That seems to work much better. But again, I want to see the finger poses, and I guess it's not a mitten. I don't know why I thought it was a mitten, just from that angle. You've got some real, intersection here, And yeah, again, use the IK, get these things moving together, and get it to her hand that has a real grip. Like again, it looks like the hand is interpenetrating here as well. So it's good to have your camera view kind of locked down, but also look in the perspective view and get right in there and you know get a good grip on it. And again, conceptually, like the modeled pattern from the Shadows of the Leaves, it's too contrasty right now. I think we want to see it blurred. It looks like you've done a little bit to get rid of some of that in the background, but I still say, to me, that's just real contrasty. And these teeny tiny leaves, not to mention the trees have these big bulbous kind of cartoony things, and you're sort of, I mean, to me, within the world of this cartoon, we don't see individual leaves, so I would say, therefore, we don't see individual leaves' shadows, you know. So, but if you like that model look, okay, we can kind of go along for the ride, for believability, but then, just blur it so it's not just this really sharp pattern here, and then suddenly the trees have a giant blob on top, and it's just a weird uh, inconsistency. Um, yeah, I'm really liking how this is sliding and dropping there. That works well. And if she had a grip on it, that would be great. Um, yeah, and again, get some decent hand poses in here. So yeah, I think working on the pattern of the leaves, getting good grips with the hands and good hand poses, and getting the bees movement. And I see you've improved the bee, but I think you could keep going with that. Um, and yeah, I'll take that to the next level. All right, next up is Steven. All right, look at that. Those particles of that snow. It looks great. Really like it. And I know this is not a particles class. Oh, I see you've played it twice in this thing. So really liking it when he's coming down the hill. I don't know what happened here. I felt like we saw this come into the frame more last time. It looks like it just sort of appears now. Oh yeah, that's better. Oh, I don't know. I guess that's all right. Yeah, it felt real fast. I think you could probably add just a few frames on that shot because, like, when you first watch it, it seems to go by really quick. But maybe it's all right. And the snow looks great here when he's coming down. It just looks really good, but somehow it's not holding up as well um, when it's in the foreground there. And I'm not sure what you've got going on here. It looks like it's a lot of spheres, and I think that maybe those spheres were working when we were at this distance, but that when they're this close to the camera, less so. Yeah, especially there, they almost look they're like these shiny, and then they suddenly fade and blur out. So it seems to me that maybe you're doing a post effect on that layer where it starts out as a bunch of spheres and then gradually blurs and loses its opacity. And I guess what I would say is for this shot, you know, start with a level of opacity and blurriness that's closer to this, because I think what's bugging me when I'm watching it at full speed is the kind of brightness and the highlights and all that kind of stuff. But that when it's like that, it's a little bit more believable as snow. And for this shot, because again they're closer to the camera, if you can make them smaller, which I know would mean re-rendering them, that would be better. But it seems to kind of, because of the distance from the camera, those same things didn't bug me in that shot. But in this shot, when they're in the foreground, they do. Um, Anyways, it's a excellent piece. Far exceeding the expectations for this class. You can have some little bits of snow stuff happening here. Just keep it subtle. And if again, like in the context of you have already exceeding the expectations of the class, like if you wanted to show the results of the sled having been on the snow there and kind of showing the indentation there, that would be another improvement as well. Especially because, he leaves the frame, and so we're kind of still very much clearly seeing this area, and we expect to see that kind of crunched indentation there. But yeah, excellent, excellent work. Next up is Crystal. All right. So, yeah, definitely some improvements. I can see that you decided to scrap that first. I think you had to walk from the door, and I think that was a good choice to cut that because there's already plenty going on here. And the poses have improved, but the timing still needs a lot of work. It's just going too fast. It's just so quick. And the thing is you might be able to get away with a super quick thing at the end, just to she's scared, be kind of funny, but it would work better. But like, when I look at that, well, the other thing is we're frozen. I'm going to change this to frame number. We're frozen between 0 and suddenly the camera starts moving, and I don't know if you intended that or not. I think that looks odd. I might remove that camera movement. But we're 42 frames into this before we even see any movement, and I would say is just cut off that first 42 frames. But then suddenly, she's moving very quickly. And I think there's this kind of, all at once thing where it's like when I was, if you watch that last critique video, when I was messing with it, I kept the hand locked on here as long as I could. Um, but she's like, everything moves at once, right? So leave the hand on, have her start to sit down, maybe get this, when this hand releases, maybe shortly after this hand could be planted, and then sit her butt down and kind of like break up that movement, because now it's just this one super fast movement where everything moves at the same time, and like you want the different limbs to move at somewhat different times. And here, I think you're using FK arms, and I really think you should be using IK. This is a dead giveaway that you're using FK, and that hand is just not going to stick if you're using FK. So I would switch to IK. But then it looks like IK here. So maybe you switch at that point after this. Maybe that's what's happening. So there, that looks better. I mean, this is more the right idea, where you've got that hand planted and the other hand's moving. But again, sort of this, that's just so fast. Um, and also, again, everything happens at once. So it could be like maybe she releases the hand from the head a little bit, and then maybe she turns and looks at the binoculars, and then she reaches her arm. Instead of all at once, you could break it up. Or she kind of reaches to feel for it, doesn't quite get there, and then looks, and then adjusts her hand position. But now it's just a super fast movement, and so it needs to slow down. Basically, overall, slow it down, break it up. Um, you kind of got the right idea here, where she's pushing herself up, but you're overextending, I think, a little bit. See how the hand lifts off? Clearly, it appears to, and then also the hand pushes down what looks like through the surface there. So maybe get rid of that and make sure that hand's locked down. Um, and again, the way the arm lifts with that, I would tend to leave this hand planted on the table, while she's standing up, and maybe have her move towards that as she kind of leaning towards that, instead of going this really super vertical stand up. Have her kind of move forward a little bit as she's standing up to kind of help with that reach there, and she can release. I like that extra hand plant there. That's good stuff. Um, and it looks like we've got the real kind of skating walk. I'm afraid you're moving that base circle, which you should not be. You should only be moving the root and the feet. Um, that's all right, but again, slow that down. Add some more frames there, and then leave the last bit really fast, and you'll have a good gag on the end. All right. But yeah, I mean, clearly you've put time into this. You've got some improvements. Keep going.